Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 5 of Apple TV's Shrinking, entitled Woof. This title, just like last week, another pretty meaningless title. I'm gonna let go of thinking that like maybe their titles have some sort of deep connection to the show when they 2 weeks in a row now are just citing unfunny gags, but whatever. When Jimmy said that Paul barks at people or woofs at people or whatever, I thought, and they named the episode Woof? Oh, I can't wait to hear what Harris is gonna do with this. This is gonna be hilarious. And then he just mutters the word under his breath and that's it. I'm like, you need to fire the people choosing the episode title. So that shit got me legit hyped up for what he was gonna do. And it was a total fucking letdown. Whereas it might have been funny if the episode wasn't titled Woof, and I might just be like, oh, okay, that was kind of funny. But like, it was a letdown for me because I'm thinking like, oh, well, if they named the episode after this Woof thing, this must be a hilarious gag they're setting up. Well, wrong about that. But anyway, this is another solid episode that I think really culminated with an incredibly powerful ending that I'm really curious how you guys felt about the ending, because I mean, to say the ending kicked me in the balls would be an understatement. Like, I not only almost cried, I almost cried again preparing my notes to talk about this episode. It was that profound and that impactful and that personal to me. And it might not be that personal to everybody else. So maybe no one else is gonna be like, wow, Mike, why the fuck did you almost cry on that scene? It wasn't that serious. But I'm gonna explain to you why that scene really struck me in a very personal way. When Paul said he was worried to tell Meg about his Parkinson's because he thought she'd no longer see him as a father and just like some old man that needs to be taken care of, I almost cried again typing that out, writing my notes. That's my greatest fear. Like, is losing my mental capacity or losing myself in a way where I'm now a burden on others. So like for example, my son's a teenager, right? He couldn't be bothered with me anymore. My son loves me, don't get me wrong, but he's 14. He's gonna be 15 next month. He don't give a fuck about me, man. He's out doing his own thing. But my daughters think I hung the fucking moon. And to think that one day they'll no longer see me like they do now as like some sort of god on earth, and just as some old man they have to help around and shit, like, short of losing them all together, I can't think of a worse outcome than that. And then for Harrison Ford specifically, not Jimmy, for Harrison Ford, I'm not sure I've ever seen him do anything like that. The way he was choking back tears and showing on his face this, I'm not prepared to have the conversation that I have no choice but to have right now. Like, it made me want to cry even more because like that's how I see him, right? I see him like He's fucking Indiana Jones, man. He's fucking Han Solo. And now here he is, 80 years old, choking back tears to try to come to grips with telling his daughter he's like a feeble old man now. And I'm like, not only does that resonate with me personally, because that's my greatest fear, but I also feel like I'm watching a hero of mine in Harrison Ford on screen coming to grips with his own personal age and mortality. And like, fucking Christ, that made me sad. I'm like, I'm watching Harrison. I feel like I'm watching Paul really convey something that terrifies me, but I'm also watching possibly Harrison Ford dealing with that for himself personally. And then I also have to deal with I now have to accept that for Harrison Ford as well. Like, he's no longer, he is technically still Indiana Jones apparently, but he's not the Indiana Jones we know. He's no longer Indiana Jones. He's no longer that Han Solo or that Indiana Jones. He's now this guy. And, you know, I don't pity him or anything like that. He's Harrison Ford. But just for me as a fan to see the guy that I grew up on as young Indiana Jones and young Han Solo now coming to grips with the thing that I fear, you know, most in my life, it was a lot for me to take in at the end of that episode, man. I was kind of a wreck at the end of that episode. The idea of no longer be seen as a father, or as a hero, as a god, or whatever, however my daughters view me, and being nothing more than like really just a burden. With my current like mental aptitude, like I feel the sharpest I've ever felt in my life, like mentally. Like I feel like I'm on my game. Like I feel like I just can't be stopped. And like to feel like in 30 more years this could be me is like, it fucking sucks, man. And yeah, that was a lot for me to take in on this episode. But you know what else happened that didn't destroy me? I said last week that I wanted them to do more with Gabby, and it's like they heard me. We're starting to see them delve into Gabby's feelings on marriage, her divorce. We see her give that one couple some advice and then go and talk to Paul and share entirely different feelings on marriage. But I'd like for Gabby to have a serious scene where she opens up about her divorce or something like that. Her divorce being hard, something like that. So, like I said last week, something that can maybe give Paul or Jimmy an opportunity to share with her what it's like for them to go through that. You know, Jimmy's obviously lost his wife, and then we know that Paul and his wife got divorced early in his daughter's life. Like, these are things that Gabby could be helped with, and we could end up with a really good scene that hopefully won't be ruined with jokes between Gabby and Paul, or Gabby and Jimmy, where they kind of help her process her feelings about the divorce. Because right now she's still playing jokes. She's still playing, I'm over it. You know, she had the divorce party, which she let her guard down and admitted, you know, it didn't end up being the lively event that she wanted. I think that was episode 3. You know, it would be nice to see her have like a really in-depth personal conversation where she lets her guard down and stops joking around and just says, you know what, this divorce really is giving me a hard fucking time. That'll be pretty cool. And then Jimmy in this episode, Jimmy's goal is to repair his relationship with Paul and to repair Sean's relationship with his father. And I'm going to start with talking about Sean. We see Sean, I want to talk about my new seat briefly. I talked about it in the last video. I might have to like position like my arms on like the little arm things on this chair, because like it helps me alleviate pressure on my back. And I do that all the time in the previous chair that I had, but this one sits lower and the armrests sit lower. So like if I don't actually make an effort to push my arms up, I'm just gonna sit normally, and that's hard on my back. So I'm gonna push my arms up a little bit here, and I think that's what we're gonna do going forward. You guys are aware of my back shit and how I'm just getting over this cold, and I'm back. You notice in the different chair, and just trying to make it so I can get through these things a little bit easier, because apparently my spine is made out of Pringles. So we see Sean meet up with his dad in this episode, and it seems to be going well. You know, he's given a gift. It's like his medals, they're framed, and that seems to freak Sean out. And he texts Alice, they go for a walk, and then Sean starts like acting goofy at this water tower. Like he climbs up it, he's hanging from it, and I know we're supposed to understand he's not all right mentally. I get it. And they were effective in showcasing that. It just didn't quite work for me, because he seemed to be behaving in more of a silly way, which doesn't really fit with the character. Like, I know the idea is like Sean is acting out of character, so this is how you know that he's dealing with something. I feel like it would have been more effective if his mental breakdown showcased him being unlike Sean, but in a way that fits Sean. So like maybe like if he got really, really angry to a point where it scared Alice, and you could go, okay, this makes way more sense for the character because now we see he's completely off the handle. He's angry times 10 when normally he's most of the time he's a really nice guy, but he's angry times 10 in front of Alice, and then that suits a guy who's dealing with PTSD. Whereas like dangling from a water tower and going, yo, this shit is crazy, bro, doesn't really fit the Sean character. So like I kind of wish they had showcased him his mental state and how poor it is in a different way rather than having him act goofy, because I feel like it didn't really fit the character. The idea came across, you know, he's acting out of character. He's putting his life at risk. He's not even taking it seriously. All of that makes sense. I just think it would have been a little bit better if it had been him acting out of character, but in a way that seems like the logical progression for someone who's been through what he's been through, if you follow me. So that's just small little criticism, but I got the scene and it was effective. But Jimmy doesn't actually end up fixing his relationship with Paul. Rather, it's Alice who convinces Paul to bury the hatchet with Jimmy, and Paul ends up showing up at Jimmy's pool house, and then we end up with well, I'll get to it in a minute. I'll get to what happens in that pool house in a minute. But I really come to like these scenes between Alice and Paul on this park bench. It's interesting seeing Harrison Ford work with her, and it's got to be wild for like an actress that young to be doing scenes with an actor of this caliber. But I always find the scenes funny. I always find them to be kind of heartwarming, even when Alice kind of snaps on him like she did in this scene. I love how she's frank with him. She's curt with him. I also loved how she shit on his hat. And then I love how he said, like, now you're just lying to hurt me, or something like that. I thought that was hilarious. Like, when you have Harrison Ford, if you can get little funny things like that in, it's 10 times funnier coming from him. But Jimmy also resolves things with Grace in this episode. We see him show up to one of her house showings. He gets her to commit to coming back on as a patient of his. He doesn't quite square things with Sean, like I said, but Paul does help in that regard when he shows up at the pool house, and we don't learn the specifics of what happened in Afghanistan, but we learn that essentially Sean is not proud of who he is or who he was at that time in Afghanistan. He's not proud of the things he did, so he doesn't really see the need to be showered with praise, and that's why he probably tucked tail and ran when he was giving those medals in the frame, because he's probably like, these are a reminder of the shitty things that I did in Afghanistan that I'm not proud of. So we got a little bit more information on Sean and his time over there, which I thought was great. Brian, in this episode, he plans to propose to his boyfriend, but we learned that he's committed to doing that before and hasn't followed through. And he has a conversation with Gabby where he basically says that everything goes his way, that phrase that he likes to say, because he doesn't take risks. And that felt like that scene, I love Brian, but that scene felt in like, let's throw in one more therapy scene to fill the runtime. Like, the idea of I'm scared to get married because it's a risk is so unimaginative and unoriginal that I probably would be pissed that they did it if the Brian character wasn't so fucking charming and a joy to see whenever he's on the screen. Whenever Brian's there, I love it. But like, in theory, that scene, super unnecessary. Like, I not unnecessary because we need to, I guess, understand Brian's perspective, but like the idea of like, I'm scared to get married, what if he says no, or what if things go wrong? Like, okay, if you've seen that idea in a TV show or film less than 10,000 times, raise your hand. Good, no one raised their hand. That's why that was a fucking scene that we didn't fucking need. Last thing before I get into my closing thoughts, which are gonna be present and lengthier this week, I really like the pairing of Gabby and Liz. Those two are funny together, and I think the Gabby character has kind of elevated the Liz character. And I'm not trying to shade the actress, but the depressed, empty nest Liz, who is overstepping her boundaries with Jimmy's daughter, isn't as entertaining as that exact same Liz, but cracking jokes with Gabby about Brian. That Liz is 10 times more interesting. So it's like you keep all the interesting stuff about Liz, but now it's like, oh, now she's fun when she's on screen too, cracking jokes with Gabby. I like that pairing. I think they should keep that up for the rest of the season, and for the length of the show, should the show get more seasons in the future. So closing thoughts. Gabby had a funny episode this week. I love when she's asked about her marriage. She goes, "You betcha," and then it cuts to her in Paul's office, and she's like, "Who the fuck says you?" That was really funny. I like when she caught on that Paul was only talking to her because he was being stubborn and not talking to Jimmy. Like, her reaction to all of that, I thought was great. I also like the sorry not sorry scene, and how when Paul did it, when Jimmy did it. No, wait, it was not Jim. Who was it? It was Brian. I'm sorry. When Brian did it, she's like, no, it doesn't really work anymore. But then when Jimmy did it perfectly. And then she's like, yo, I thought the phrase was dead, but I think Jimmy kind of brought it back. I thought that was funny. Her reaction to Jimmy's like behind the back snap. Well, the behind the back snap was probably like, that's the kind of stuff that I check in with Jason Segel for. Like, people, like, I feel like that was something that he walked in there and he just did that. Like, that wasn't in the script. He came in there and he did this little behind the back snap, and she's like, what the fuck was that? Like, I feel like that was probably natural because it was fucking hilarious, and that felt like something Jason Segel would do. And then lastly, Brian asking if he looked like Smithers in that bow tie with that fucking coat was so fucking funny. Like, man, you'll always get me with a Simpsons reference, but like Smithers, oh, like that's brilliant. Whoever wrote that, my hat's off to you. And then I love the voice that he did when he was like, when Gabby asked him, like, how did your mom ever realize, how did she ever not realize that you were gay? And then he did like his straight Brian voice, which was like this weird Texas fucking accent. I thought that was funny too. So, like I said, stronger episode this week than episode 4. I thought the humor was back. It hit pretty well. They seemed to listen to my criticism, not criticism, but my suggestions about how they should move forward the Gabby character. I like what they're doing there. I like the Gabby and Liz combination. I especially really liked what Harrison Ford did in this episode. Like, if it wasn't, like, I thought this was a good episode, but like, man, if I had gotten, like, this could have been like something that I put in my notes as one of the best episodes of the year if it had more like that last 30 seconds. Like, that last 30 seconds was like, holy shit. Like scene of the year, there you go. But yeah, solid episode. Still really enjoying this show. Looking forward to actually coming back next week for episode 6. Until then, peace.